कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जना बल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
तीरा वनचारी
यमुना तीरा वनचारी
यमुना तीरा वनचारी
यमुना तीरा वनचारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Jaya
Bhaktivedantasya 𝗃𝗠𝗠𝗃𝗃 Chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you all for having me. It's an honor to share whatever realizations I have. For my first time here, I'm a little nervous, speaking in front of all the devotees, some friends as well, my wife as well, speaking in front of your wife. She knows if I'm practicing or not. So we're going to dive into the verse that we were speaking about. Is from the okay. So it's the 9th chapter, the 26th verse of the Gita. We're going in order. Is that correct? 9th chapter, 26th verse. And this verse is. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. So this verse is one of the most famous verses in the Gita. And since this is my first time speaking here, I'll kind of give you a little brief. If you've kind of heard some of my classes, I'd like to try to keep our exploration of these beautiful verses and Shastra in a relevant way. Sometimes we can get very intellectual, right, with reading, and that's fine. We want to get into the intellect, the intellect of it. But I want us to focus today on how we can really apply what we're reading in the Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, different texts in our life, and how we can improve ourselves in our relationship in loving Krishna, and then in our relationship in our family, our Vaishnava Sangha, our friends, all of that. Because there's so much actually here, and the more that I've been able to try to go a little bit deeper and deeper for myself, the more I've seen how much more I can actually grow and learn and apply in my own life. So I want us to apply that. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah? Okay. Say Haribol if it's okay. Haribol! So we're gonna I guess part of the qualification for that for all of us is to ask ourselves the questions and reflect as we're hearing. And so the Shravanam, and then there's Mananam, really listening and then reflecting on what you're saying, what you're hearing. And so this verse is very famous. It's one of the most quoted verses in the Gita. We all are familiar with it. And I'll go through the verse, and then we'll read just very briefly the translation and the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah. So Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam
Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam
Yome Bhakta Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Upartam Ashnami Priyatatmana. Translation: If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. I'll read that one more time. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. And purport by Srila Prabhupada. We'll just read, it's a long purport, has a lot of very good information in it, wisdom. We'll just read the first section of the purport, because that applies directly to this verse, and then we'll go into some thoughts. Perfect. For the intelligent person, it is essential to be in Krishna consciousness, engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, in order to achieve a permanent blissful abode for eternal happiness. The process for achieving such a marvelous result is very easy. It can be attempted by even the poorest of the poor, without any kind of qualification. The only qualification required in this connection is to be a pure devotee of the Lord. It does not matter what one is or where one is situated. The process is so easy that even a leaf or a little water or fruit can be offered to the Supreme Lord in genuine love, and the Lord will be pleased to accept it. No one, therefore, can be barred from Krishna consciousness because it's so easy and universal. Who is such a fool that he does not want to be Krishna conscious by this simple method and thus attain the highest perfectional life of eternity, bliss, and knowledge? Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotees. He does not want any kind of offering from a non-devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient, and yet he accepts the offering of his devotee in an exchange of love and affection. To develop Krishna consciousness is the highest perfection of life. Bhakti is mentioned twice in this verse in order to declare more emphatically that bhakti, or devotional service, is the only means to approach Krishna. No other condition, such as becoming a brahmana, a learner, scholar, or a very rich man, or a great philosopher, can induce Krishna to accept some offering. Without the basic principle of bhakti, nothing can induce the Lord to agree to accept anything from anyone. Bhakti is never causal. The process is eternal. It is a direct action in service to the absolute whole. 𝗔𝗯ance 𝘂𝘁𝗁. Okay, so this verse is, again, one of the more famous verses, and it's very interesting. This is in the 9th chapter of the Gita, and it's entitled Bhakti Yoga. So far in the Gita, we've gone through introduction, contents of the Gita summarized, and then the Gita can kind of roughly be broken down into 3 sections, right? Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and 𝗔𝗯ance, or analysis, Jnana Yoga. And right now we've gone through kind of the Karma Yoga section, an introduction of the Gita, and we're getting into Bhakti Yoga. And this is really like the midway point. There's 18 chapters in the Gita, and we're at the 9th chapter. And it's stated, I've heard this many times, growing up hearing lectures, that it's explained that this is kind of the most secret of secrets, this section. Just like if you were an author, where do you kind of put the most sacred content of your book? The heart of the book. Not necessarily at the beginning, because everyone's reading that, right? Maybe the end, people flip to the end, but like that middle section. And Krishna mentions that in the beginning of this verse, of this chapter, he says, this is 𝗷𝗫 right? So it's the king of knowledge, and it's the most confidential knowledge, actually. And if you think about it, bhakti is, and I know there's some people here who are new, so I'll try to keep it new-friendly. Bhakti means love and devotion, loving service. It's very simple, actually, if you really think about it. But it's actually also the highest and very difficult to achieve. And we'll talk about why that is today. Okay, so we're just kind of establishing where we are. We're in 9th chapter, 26th verse. Bhakti Yoga. Krishna's now giving Arjuna, he's sharing, he shared Karma Yoga, talked about Jnana Yoga, meditating, being able to hold the breath, meditating between the eyebrows, and holding your life force, all of that. And now he's talking about Bhakti Yoga. And one of the things I want to mention is in the first verse, kind of what's our qualification for getting into bhakti, or into a loving relationship with God. Krishna mentions, my dear Arjuna, in the first verse. It's not up here, but I have it in my notes. I'll be looking here a little bit here. He says, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, right? Then he goes into sharing the secrets of Bhakti Yoga, because you're never envious of me. And I was thinking that it's really hard to develop a relationship with someone when you're envious of them, right? Even God, but what to speak of Krishna, but all of us, if we're envious of a friend of ours, if we're envious of someone in our family, we may not want to admit that we're envious, right? It's kind of not a great feeling to admit, right? We feel envious, I'm going to hide that. We tend to project envy outward, and I call it the 3 C's. We complain, we criticize, and we compare, right? And the 4th C is we compete. We compete with other people, right? And so, in order to kind of really understand Krishna, I feel like we have to not be envious of him. And that's hard to do, actually, if we're honest. So we'll keep that in mind. And then in this chapter, before he comes to this verse, he describes himself. So he says, I am the father of this universe. I am the mother I am the support, I'm the syllable Om. He describes, I'm the Vedas, I'm the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness. Many different verses he gives on this. And the title of this talk for me is Love and Devotion. I want to focus on these two words in the translation. When one offers a leaf, water, fruit, all of that with love and devotion. So I want to talk about love and devotion, a heart-centered approach to bhakti. Because when Krishna is describing himself, he's saying, one is not envious of me. Then he's saying, I am all these things. And then he gives kind of the secret, love and devotion. What he's really saying here is that Krishna craves our love. Krishna craves our love. It's interesting because in this world, we're so used to kind of like being able to buy affection or buy attention or validation from other people. But actually, we're not buying real love. And even Krishna can't buy love. This is an interesting point to know, that Krishna, who has everything, wants our love, actually. He can't force it. Love is a choice, right? Everyone's experienced that, right? Love is a choice. You have to choose to love someone. You can't force someone to love you, right? Even Krishna can't do that. And so, Krishna is saying that I received the love and devotion that's with something is given by. I've received that. Krishna is Bhagavan. In the Gita it says, 𝗔𝗯cie𝘂𝗁𝗿. Almost every chapter is 𝗔𝗯cie𝘂𝗁𝗿. What does Bhagavan mean? And we can show it's the first slide. It means the 6 opulences, one who holds all 6 opulences. Does anyone know what those are? The 6 opulences of Bhagavan?
Well, everybody gets to pick one.
One, yeah.
Renunciation.
Pronunciation, okay.
Knowledge.
Power, yes, knowledge. Any other ones? Wealth, yes. Beauty, yes. And fame. Okay, so we can have all 6 of those up. So Krishna is Bhagavan. He has all of these opulences. Sometimes we see some celebrities in our world. They have many of these opulences in a great amount, right? Look at Jeff Bezos, Amazon. He's got a lot of money. Most money. Definitely on the top. He's always in the top 3 list in the world. I think he's number 1 by a lot now. But you have those type of people. But who has more than Krishna, right? You might have something in this planet, but Krishna has the entire cosmic manifestation and beyond, right? So similarly, also with the other opulences, beauty, fame, renunciation, Krishna has all of these in full, if we think about it. But even these opulences can't buy love, actually. They can't buy devotion, right? As they say in the West, money can't buy love. And we'll see that even with celebrities these days, or if you see someone who has a lot of money, a lot of fame, Mikhail and I, we're big basketball fans, right? And we grew up following a lot of different NBA players, these basketball players, athletes, and often you see different stories. And tell me if I'm wrong, but like when they have so much money and they have so much influence, everyone wants to be around them, right? They have a huge entourage, they have a team, everyone loves them, they have so many fans. But often those people are there because they want something from them. They want the money, they want some attention, they want to be part of it, right? And you see so many different situations, I've seen so many examples of those same celebrities where once they lose all their wealth, when they lose their fame, no one wants to be around them, right? No one cares for them, actually. People leave them, they lose their money, whatever the case might be. Whether it's loved ones, whether it's friends and whatnot, right? Does that make sense for everyone, right? So you can see kind of money can't buy love. So even for Krishna, money can't buy love. These opulences can't buy love. But Krishna wants that love and devotion. And not only does Krishna want that love and devotion, we want that love and devotion too in our life. Think about all the material possessions you've had, whether it's a nice car, nice house, the Tesla. Saw a couple Teslas outside. Everyone's been getting those. I know they're on sale now. Right? So different things, right? Whether it's that, whether it's kind of the gross items like the car, the house, the money, or it's the subtle attention, the love, but the validation, the attention, power, wanting some power, all of that. But we also, underneath all of that, we want love, actually. We're looking for love. And that's why the heart is so important, because Krishna wants our heart, because our heart is full of love. And what's interesting is I was thinking, life is fundamentally an emotional experience, right? If we think about it, sometimes, again, we like to get intellectual about things, like to think about logic and rationale and all of that. But if you really think about it, life is an emotional experience. What's the most important things to all of us in life? What are those most important things? Right? Relationships, right? Our loved ones, our kids, our family, our health, joy, our community, our sangha, right? What's really important? It's all something that's connected to us emotionally, right? It's not just the things. You might have a watch, you might have an Apple Watch one day, you might lose it the next day. You'll maybe be affected for a day or two, a week, but imagine losing, we've all lost someone in our life, right? It's hard to recover from that, quite frankly, in general, because they've meant so much to us. There's an emotional connection, right? And so, similarly, bhakti is an emotional experience, not just an intellectual experience. Now, intellect is fine, but it's beyond it. And His Holiness Radhanath Swami always says this, and I love quoting it, that our primary motivation in life for every single human being is to love others and to be loved. Every action we do is to love others or to be loved by others, actually. Even some of the ones that are feel not so great, even if we're sometimes rude to others, or we're mean to others, or do mean things, we're actually asking, we're crying out for love. There's a lack of love that we're feeling, actually, from others, right, if we're honest. So we're all looking for love. Krishna is also looking for love, kind of established this, right, so far. And he wants our love and devotion. Even though he's got all of this times infinity, all these opulences, he's Bhagavan, and we've got some of these, but in a lot less quantity, right? He's got the higher quantity. Quality, okay, that's there, but quantity is the big difference, as Prabhupada says. But there's also an issue. So we want love, and we want to offer love, but what's the issue? If we're really honest, we have a void within all of us, actually. We have a void within, like a little emptiness within, where there's a lack of love, right? There's a lack of connection sometimes with Krishna. And we see this in the world in so many different ways, that when we feel a lack of love, as I was mentioning, we kind of like to paint over that lack of love. And we can find power, we find significance, attention, right? Fame, material objects. It's like all these things. What we find is that we've all probably experienced this in our life, where all these things is kind of like insatiable. We'll get the nice car, we'll get the Tesla, right? We'll get the nice house, we'll get this, that, and the other. We'll get the nice job, our dream job. But then it's like we're still unhappy, still unfulfilled. What's going on, right? And it's kind of scary. We're like, oh, what's going on here, right? But actually, underneath all that collection is we're looking for love and devotion as well. And so therefore, with Krishna, we can actually have this relationship. The highest expression of this relationship of love can occur. Because Krishna, inevitably in this world, we're kind of disappointed, right? Even with our families, sometimes we can be disappointed. With friends, we can be disappointed. But Krishna is like the perfect person to love, actually. Because even if he disappoints us, we still have that relationship. It's an internal relationship with him. And he actually knows how to not disappoint us long term. Now, so we've kind of established this. What I want to talk about when it comes to developing love and devotion, it's so important for us to develop our capacity to love, actually. And this is what I mean by heart-centered bhakti yoga. When you think about schools, we have schools, and my wife works in a school, but we have schools for the body, right? You can go to the gym and you can work out, you can go to yoga class and work out your body. Then you have schools for the intellect, right? You can go to get a PhD in Oxford and do different things. But if you really think about it, we don't really have schools for the heart, right? Where can you really build your capacity to love others? Do we have any school for that? We don't, right? So this is kind of the school for that, on our relationships and our community with Krishna and all of that. And often we kind of default, because we don't have a school for this, we often default to what we saw, whether it's in our family, our friends, our communities, our societies, whatever is there, we default to that. And that could be good, but also maybe there can be something lacking in that. So we have to consciously develop this capacity, and often what I find is that we're developing our capacity to have a bigger ego often through life, right? All these opulences that we're getting, whether we're getting a good education, or we're getting some good jobs, often if we're not careful, we can become more egotistical instead of more devoted and loving, actually. It's a kind of two ways we can end up going, right? And so this is kind of the normal trend in society, where we're often unconsciously developing our ego than our compassion in society, because we're not taught how to actually love each other, to love Krishna with purity, with genuine love. I want to pause here and just have us all reflect on this. Think about how good are we, how good are you, and myself included, at loving others, at loving Krishna. What's the quality of our love? Actually really thinking about that. If we're really honest, is sometimes loving others about us, what we're getting in return? Right? Often it is. It's really about what we're getting, what our needs are, what our desires are, versus actually loving others. This is a good reflection, because the deeper we go in our relationship with ourselves and understanding where we're kind of lacking in this love, and understanding this, and the deeper we can go in our relationship with Krishna. I remember many years ago, I was, this was like 5-6 years back, I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he's a trusted friend, and we were at the Bhakti Center. Is anyone familiar with the Bhakti Center? Any of you? And he's older than me, very wise. And I was having this realization that, I grew up in the temple, practically, chanting, and as a kid doing kirtan, as 𝗷𝗲𝗿 Prabhu mentioned, and playing mridanga, and different things, and at home as well. But I was having this reflection, and it was kind of, and being open here, being a little vulnerable with everyone. I was reflecting that I honestly didn't feel like I had much taste at all for actually connecting, and chanting. And I felt like I was feeling like really stuck, really kind of like unmotivated, uninspired, really numb, honestly. And I remember telling him, and I felt a lot of shame around it, because I felt like I was like a bad devotee or something, And I felt like he was gonna kind of maybe criticize me, or like, give me some like, you're in Maya, kind of like that, like give me some sauce, And it was really sweet. I opened up to my friend, and I said, I've just been having kind of this existential kind of crisis where I'm like, I don't feel that I'm really connected. I don't feel like I really have taste, even though I've been doing this for such a long time. And my friend was actually so encouraging. And in that reflection, he looked at me and said, it's really great that you're having this realization, actually. And I was like, what do you mean? This feels really bad. I mean, it feels like, doesn't feel good to say. And he said, because you're actually going deeper. For you to have that realization that you're feeling uninspired, you're feeling stuck, that means there's something deeper. That means you can keep digging further. So there's nothing wrong with being honest, but then what are you going to do about that? Right? What's your next steps from that? And so instead of blaming and criticizing ourselves, we can start to see, okay, Krishna wants our love. We have this void within. We want to love Krishna as well. But where are we kind of falling short in that with him, and also in our relationships around us? And then start to hold ourselves accountable to growing, and becoming better. And the point also around intellect I want to make is that it's not that intellect isn't important. Especially when I'm speaking to an audience, and so many of us are from India, we really value studying, and that's very important. Bhakti is what I call, and what I've heard is called wise love. So we have our philosophy, which is our foundation, but we also have bhakti, which is devotion. So you have head and heart, both, right? It's not just all head, and it's not all heart in the sense that it is all heart, but we need some head to balance that out, right? Just like they say, philosophy without love is dry speculation. And love without wisdom can just become reckless and sentimental, right? There's no grounding to it. And so bhakti is philosophy. We have the philosophy here, but then it's also about cultivating our heart that's full of compassion and love, and actually devotion and sharing that with each other and Krishna. Right? So that's what it comes down to. How do we develop this love? Any ideas? How do we develop this love?
Connecting to people who knows how to love.
Connecting people with that know how to love? Absolutely. It's said that in bhakti, it's said that the seed of bhakti is like transferred in some ways from the heart of a pure devotee to us. Meaning someone who's actually deeply cultivated this seed within of love can give it to us. It's like mentorship. There's a wonderful quote by a leadership coach named 𝗔𝗯cie. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. He says that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Right? So you can think, who do you spend time with? We become like our company, actually. So to your point, if we're spending time or hanging out, but really spending time and learning from advanced spiritualists and souls, we become also more inspired in our own practice. You can pull up the next slide. So Krishna, later in the Gita, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but he talks about in chapter 16, he mentions in verses 1 to 3, he mentions qualities in the chapters called divine and demoniac natures, right? And the premise of this is that we all have kind of like a good, in the Native Americans called the good dog and the bad dog within us, right? So we've got like a divine nature and we've got a not so great nature. Does everyone agree with this, right? And often the not so good nature comes out when we're stressed out, right? We're running late to the office, or like we have some deadlines, or we're feeling stressed in whether it's school or at work or financially, whatever the case might be, right? Someone says something to us that we don't like, they put us down, or they say something very mean to us, then we can get to like a very, also mean place as well. So he says that there's 2 different types of natures, and Krishna says you have to cultivate these qualities. He gives a list of qualities, and this is the list of qualities here. And I paraphrased it, but as you can see here, he says fearlessness, cultivation of spiritual knowledge. I can't see this at all. Austerity, non-violence, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living beings, gentleness, modesty, humility, forgiveness, and freedom from envy. So you can read that list. I can hardly see it. But we can kind of measure ourselves on these qualities, right? And I want to say this, being a good devotee is something that I've realized in my own life is not just chanting our rounds. It's not just doing our sadhana. It's how are we showing up with these qualities actually in the world? How are we treating ourselves? How are we treating other people? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, 𝗔𝗯ance Krishnanam sarva dharma sar. Right? So compassion to all living beings and chanting the holy name are the essence of dharma. Now, he didn't say just chanting the holy name, the essence of dharma. He says also compassion to living beings. So that's also important. Because if we're chanting, but then we're committing a million offenses in our behavior, in our actions, and we all can get into this. We don't need to judge ourselves or anyone here. We've all made mistakes. Then we're missing the point, quite frankly. Even if we're chanting our 16 rounds with tension and all of that, we're missing the point, actually. Our spiritual sadhana is not actually complete. And so it's important that we develop these divine qualities. And then there's also those demoniac qualities that Krishna says. And here he says, pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance all belong to that quality. So again, we can see when we're stressed, when we get into these qualities, it's not so good. Right? We commit a lot of offenses abroad. And we can actually block the flow of blessings and the flow of love in our not just our lives, in our community, in our families, but also from Krishna. Sometimes we think that we can just say whatever we want to everyone else and Krishna still loves us. That's true. But at the same time, we're still accountable. If we're on the spiritual path, we're trying to practice bhakti yoga. trying to be a Vaishnava, aspiring to be Vaishnavas, we're still accountable to Guru and Krishna for our behavior at the same time. Does that make sense? Making sense, everyone? Following me? Okay. So, if we don't cultivate our heart space, all the opulences that we have, they're kind of like zeros, right? And when we cultivate these divine qualities, it puts a 1 in front of those zeros. We can show the next slide. I was just thinking that all these qualities, so you have, let's say you have strength, right? So strength without compassion, and we see this in the world so many times with different leaders in different countries, that strength without compassion becomes brutality and becomes domination, right? So if you have strength but you don't have, again, you haven't developed compassion, this quality that Krishna is mentioning, compassion to others, then it can become brutality. Next one, also honesty. Honesty without compassion, what does that become? Harshness, right? Sometimes we kind of, we've all either done this or someone's had this done to us where someone says, I'm just being honest with you. And they say the most rude and hurtful thing, right? And we've done this sometimes to others. Where that's not real honesty, actually, if we really think about it. Honesty has to be done with sensitivity and compassion, once again. Because otherwise it can become harshness and indifference, actually. And become, again, damaging. Another one. Confidence without humility, what can that become? Arrogance, right? So if we have confidence, that's good. But if we don't have any humility, if we never learned humility, if we never practiced humility, then that can very much become arrogance. And we can commit so many mistakes from there. So we can see that this quality of being able to capacity to love that Krishna wants, we have to work on that. And one thing I love to think about in my own meditation is that we say that we're practicing Krishna consciousness, right? We never say we're Krishna conscious. We might get there, we want to get there, that's the goal to get there, and we will get there actually one day. But we're practicing. And just like you're practicing mridanga, we're practicing singing, we're practicing whatever, basketball, whatever we're practicing, if you're practicing a sport, you have to practice it continuously, daily, multiple times a week. Right, you're putting in time and effort. We have to practice. We have our sadhana, and we have to practice also cultivating these qualities. Both are important. Right, that's the point of sadhana, is that we're showing up every day to practice, to practice, to practice. So that when the exams come, whether it's interactions with others, time of death, whatever the case might be, we're showing up and we have something in the bank that we're showing up with, right? That we have something there. So we have to look at that. And again, all these qualities, when we cultivate compassion, it centers all these qualities. We can have all the opulences. If we have strength, we can use it in service, to protect, to serve. If we have beauty, we can use that in service. If we have fame, we can use that in service. If we have intelligence, we can use that in service. All these qualities, we have wealth. And there's nothing wrong with any of these opulences. Sometimes in our Sangha, we think that, we shouldn't have wealth. It's not good, it's Maya. But there's nothing wrong there's so many devotees who have so much wealth, and because they're trying to cultivate these qualities, they can use it to serve on a grand scale, actually. Because to get anything done in this world, you need some money, right? So we can go to the next slide. The essence of all this is that, and if there's one thing you take away from this class, is that Krishna, something that came to my heart when I was writing this, is that Krishna actually reciprocates with the quality of our love, not the quantity of our knowledge. So we can know the entire Gita, we can know all the verses, we can have this, that, and the other, but if we haven't developed these divine qualities, chapter 16 of the Gita, then we've lost the point, quite frankly. And we need to kind of redirect and figure out, like a compass, we have to figure out our north point again. I want to give 2 examples and start to wrap up the class. The first example is, does anyone know what this picture is from? It's very famous. I think everyone here knows, right? Where is it from? Yeah, so the Gita, you have Krishna, he is driving the chariot of Arjuna. And I was thinking of two stories of how Krishna also exemplifies this. Krishna, he doesn't just talk. This is the Gita. He's giving a talk. He's like a leadership coach. He's coaching Arjuna. Arjuna's having a crisis. He's having like a panicked crisis. I have to kill my grandfather Bhishma. I have to kill my uncles. I have to kill my cousins, 𝗷𝗲𝗿, etc. Why should I actually do this, right? And so he has this crisis. We all have crises in our lives. And Krishna's always there. So Krishna, he's giving guidance, right? And there's a wonderful story of a Brahmana. This is from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, where I think Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India, and he came across a Brahmin, and he noticed that the Brahmin was reading the Gita. And this Brahmin was illiterate, so he didn't know how to read, actually. He was reading the Gita, and so because he didn't know how to read, he was reading it upside down and sideways. Essentially, he was looking through the pictures in the Gita and whatnot. And Mahaprabhu went to him, and a lot of other people were making fun of this Brahmana. They were saying, "Oh, what is he doing? He's just sentimental. He's just sitting there, and he doesn't even know how to read, and he's a Brahmin, etc." Making fun of him, practically. And many of you might know this story. But Mahaprabhu came to him and said, "Why are you?" And he noticed that this Brahmana was crying when he was reading the Gita. Tears were pouring down his eyes. And he said to him, "Why are you crying?" He asked him. You don't know how to read, but you're crying. I'm very curious about this. And the Brahmana said to Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that I'm reading this Gita and I don't know how to read, but I'm seeing how Krishna became the chariot driver for Arjuna. And a chariot driver is kind of like a very lowly position. Like, back in 5,000 years ago, being a chariot driver for someone was kind of like, it was a very opulent thing that you brag about, a very opulent position. And he's saying that Krishna, who's Swayam Bhagavan, who's God, has so much humility. He's saying that Krishna, who's God, has the humility for his friend, out of love, for his dear, dear friend, he is doing this. He's becoming the chariot driver. And to see Krishna do that, to see God do that, I'm crying in my heart. To see how magnanimous Krishna is, right? So you can see how Krishna, he doesn't just talk, he actually shows it. He shows it through his action. The Gita was just a 45-minute rendition that we're still exploring because there's so much richness and depth to it. But Krishna, in so many examples in the Mahabharata, and even his Leelas in Vrindavan, in so many areas, Dwarka, he shows how he craves love. He doesn't crave the other things. Also, another example, you can show the next picture. So this is the best picture I could find of this. Does anyone know what this picture is?
Vidura and his wife.
Yes, Vidura's wife. And Vidura and Krishna. So it's one of my favorite pastimes. I love the Mahabharata. I grew up reading the Mahabharata and watching, the serials, but mainly reading Krishna Dharma Prabhu's Mahabharata, which is incredible. And you can really see Krishna in his way of how he interacts with everyone in the Mahabharata. You can really see how he's so sensitive. And kind of giving a short story to this, Krishna, he obviously the Pandavas and Kauravas are going to war, right? 𝗷𝗲𝗿, who becomes the king, and Dhritarashtra is there, but 𝗷𝗲𝗿's really in charge. He doesn't want to give the Pandavas anything at all, right? And he says that if they want anything, they have to fight for it. So many times, Bhishma, Vidura, different elders in the Kuru dynasty, they try to get 𝗷𝗲𝗿 to understand, and his team of rascals, right? Karna, etc., and 𝗔𝗯ance, etc. And they don't want to really listen. They don't want to listen at all. And so Krishna goes one last time. They're preparing for war. They're preparing for battle. But Krishna says, one time as a friend, I will go and I'll try to make peace with them, with the Kauravas. So he goes, and 𝗷𝗲𝗿 he's very clever. He's very intelligent. He hasn't cultivated those divine qualities, we can see, but he still has many opulences. So it's very dangerous, right, as we talked about. Strength without compassion brutality, right? So Duryodhana's thinking, okay, Krishna's coming, I know what Krishna's gonna do. Let's kind of, bring Krishna in as a guest, so we can kind of manipulate him into becoming on our side. So he had no real love for Krishna, actually. He didn't love Krishna. He was actually very envious of Krishna. But he said, you know what, we'll arrange the best feast for Krishna. And he said, we'll have 𝗔𝗯nci's palace ready for Krishna, which is even more opulent than Duryodhana's palace, right? So he's saying, okay, we'll do all this, we'll have the elephants, the procession, all of that for Krishna. And we'll kind of manipulate Krishna into loving us, to favoring us. Krishna will be so happy, and his heart will melt by seeing everything we're doing for him, and then he'll side with us. So Krishna goes to Hastinapur, and when he gets there, he receives Duryodhana. And Duryodhana says, Krishna, he sprinkles his feet and washes his feet and has this whole procession. He says, we have the best food, and we have the palace ready for you to stay. Right? So we can talk the next day. And Krishna looks at him and says, actually, I don't want to stay with you. And Duryodhana is very offended. Right? He says, Krishna, we made all these arrangements. Why don't you want to stay with us? And Krishna is very forthcoming. He says that, actually, I don't want to stay with you because you don't have any love in your heart for me, actually. And that's what I'm looking for. And he said that if you have love for me, you would listen to me. I've been asking you to not go forward with this war, to make peace with the Pandavas, and you haven't done that. And he said, just do that and I can stay with you. We'll show that you actually have love. And then Duryodhana said, I can do anything else, but I don't want to do that, essentially, right? And so Krishna actually goes to Vidura's house. And Vidura was, he was a half-brother, I believe, of Dhritarashtra. But in those times, he was considered very lowly. Like he wasn't very much respected, unfortunately, because of the way the Kuru dynasty had been taken. And so, but Krishna went to Vidura's house to stay. He said, I'll stay with Vidura because Vidura actually loves me deeply. And there's many different versions of this story, but the version that I have up here with this picture, Krishna goes to Vidura's house, and Vidura and his wife are there, and they actually didn't have much to serve Krishna. And they were so surprised that Krishna was there staying with them that they became overwhelmed. And Vidura's wife, and in some stories they say Vidura as well, they were giving Krishna some bananas. And so they were peeling the bananas to give to Krishna, who was staying with them. And they got so excited that Krishna was staying with them that they forgot to give Krishna the bananas. They threw the bananas out. They only had banana peels, basically, right? And we all know banana peels are like kind of not so useful, right? Especially eating, of course. And so if you want to just leave them out, but and so they ended up giving Krishna the banana peels. And when they realized what they were doing, finally, a couple minutes in, they snapped out of their ecstasy, and they're like, Krishna, oh my God, I can't believe we gave you these banana peels. And Krishna said, I'm having so much more enjoyment eating these banana peels than I would being with Duryodhana right now, actually. And you can see this might feel like an extreme example, but Krishna is not looking for what exactly you're giving him materially. He's looking for how it's given, the right mood that it's given in. That's really important. And you can see with this example of Vidura actually had love for Krishna. His wife had love for Krishna. So even though they had these banana peels, they didn't have much. Krishna was really relishing whatever little they had, actually. And then I think they actually had real prasad for Krishna too, so let's not be concerned. But I want to share these two examples because often we can think that it's what we have. We have a lot to give. Krishna didn't give us this. We kind of lament, we didn't get this, we didn't get that. They have this, they have that. Why don't I have all these opulences? I would do more if I had this. But actually, we don't have to have a lot to do a lot. We can see Srila Prabhupada, he came in 1965. And why do we still talk about him? It's 2023. Why do we talk about him all the time? Why do we say Jai Srila Prabhupada? Because for this very reason that he didn't have anything, but he had love in his heart. And he had Raj Bhakti, and he wanted to share that with everyone. He felt that it was so important that you have everything in the West, you have all facilities in the West, but you forgot this one thing. You don't have this one thing. And so how can I give you that? So he came over on the boat, Jaladuta, and went through so much, heart attacks, so many health issues, so much trouble in so many different ways, in New York, around the world. And he tried to give us this opportunity to really develop our capacity to love one another and also to love Krishna. And that's the highest perfection of our spiritual life. So you can just go to the next slide as I wrap up. So I wanted to end off with this, that we all have this opportunity to develop our capacity. And this is a picture of Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva. And they came in Kali Yuga, as I said, over 500 years ago. And one of the things I like to share and that I meditate on myself is that Mahaprabhu didn't leave much in terms of written text and whatnot. Just really the 𝗔𝗯𝗎𝗂𝗁 is there, 8 verses. And the first verse is actually really apt. He talks about 𝗔𝗯𝗏𝗏 mahadavagni-nirvapanam, right? And so 𝗔𝗯𝗏𝗏 means to cleanse the mirror of the heart. So we talked about the heart today. And you can really liken the mirror of the mind or the mirror of the heart. And he says that there's dust on that mirror from lifetimes. There's dust, right? What is that dust? It's those qualities, right? Those anarthas. And it's called anartha nivritti. Anartha means unwanted conditioning. We all have unwanted conditioning. Things that we don't like about ourselves. Things that aren't so good about ourselves, which we talked about. So we can reflect on that. And how do we cleanse those things, right? Anartha nivritti. We can cleanse that mirror of the heart. Because eventually in a mirror, like if you have a mirror, if you don't cleanse the dust, then you won't be able to see yourself. But if you remove the dust, you can actually see yourself clearly, right? So we have this opportunity, and how can we do that? He says in the same verse, Param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtana. That's a big part of that. So we have our sadhana, we have the holy name, and then we also need to also consciously work on gardening the garden of the heart by developing these divine qualities. So I want to stop there. We covered a lot in that time. I hope that was valuable. I love it for it to be even more interactive. We have a large room, so it's hard to engage everyone. We talked about a number of things. Talked about 9th chapter of the Gita, right, being in the middle of the Gita. We talked about Arjuna not being envious, and that's how we can connect to Krishna. If we're envious of someone, we can't really love them. We talked about the opulences, so Bhagavan, the six opulences, how Krishna has those in full. But even though he has those, he still wants our love because you can't buy love. It's a free choice. And we also want love. We have this void within, all of us, kind of where we feel empty, if we're honest. But we can fill that through loving connection with each other in Krishna. And life is fundamentally an emotional experience. Bhakti is an emotional experience. And we can reflect on how we can develop these divine qualities and purify ourselves and develop a relationship with Krishna that can be really fulfilling. And also, how do we treat each other in our family and our family, friends, and our devotee community as well. So I want to pause there. Thank you all for having me. It's really been an honor. Very well.
Thank you. So we can have 1 or 2 questions. If anybody has a question. So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's more of a comment, not a question.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the point you mentioned that at one point of time you felt disconnected, you are very important, and you express your feelings to your friend. So that is just reflecting on that. Even in my life too. At one point of time, I still. So I expressed the same thing to one of the senior devotees. So she also mentioned same thing, like it is okay to be vulnerable and express what is my status at that point of time. She was saying that actually Krishna is waiting for that moment. That is the point of time we really see the Krishna's hand.
Yeah.
So I was just relating that the quote which you had mentioned that honesty without compassion is kind of harshness.
Yeah.
So until that time, we are just, suffering our body, mind, thinking that the entrance of Krishna into our life when we just be open. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for sharing your reflections. And that's so true. Krishna, that's why in the Gita when Arjuna breaks down, Krishna immediately, he's there to help, like you said. So Krishna is looking for that vulnerability. And he already knows where we are. It's just, sometimes we don't want to admit where we are actually. So yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? One question all the time.
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking about how do you recognize true love for Krishna as Bhagwan? Because I'm thinking Krishna as Brahman, which is like the all-pervading aspect, or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? That is too abstract. Like that I don't even know how to approach. And then there's Krishna as Paramatma, right? So that who is in everyone's heart. That I can understand, right? I can see, like, if I treat my fellow human beings with love, then I'm honoring that Paramatma, and that is a reflection of love for Krishna in a way.
Yeah.
And then Krishna as Bhagwan, how do you recognize that? Like, what is the evidence of that, or what's the litmus test of that?
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful question. I'll answer to the best of my ability. I'm not super qualified, but I will say a couple things. One is that Krishna is a person, and so just like you can love, your husband, wife, or a child, there's different levels of relationship with Krishna also. So there's different bhavas, so Sakhya bhav, Dasya bhav, Vatsalya, all of that, Madhurya, and so you can study some of those. But Krishna is a person. We're also hearing more about him, and his pastimes will also help you develop love. And that's been my experience. I was giving these examples from the Mahabharata. There's pastimes to me that are that make me, emotional when I read them sometimes, because I feel connected to Krishna in that way. So each person has a very unique relationship with God, with Krishna, and so you have to kind of uncover that. But the best way I found is, after you have your sadhana, you can chant, you can meditate on holy name, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But then also when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, you read Krishna Bhagavad Gita, you'll find certain things, even the Mahabharata, different texts, and you'll find yourself attracted to different qualities or sections or pastimes and stories. So that would be what I would share, and as you find that, you can keep going with that, essentially. And then the deeper you'll get, the more you'll naturally feel that coming, kind of organically. But I don't know how far even I'm along that, but I can just offer that from my little vantage point. So hope that helps. Yeah. And I think the other thing I would say is that, to your point around Paramatma, you can also feel that in one of the ways I feel Krishna's love for me is by the people around me. So the blessings in my life that are given by Krishna. So whether it's my family, whether it's different people in my life, different blessings that happen, we can see all the good things in our life that happen, even the bad things, but at least let's start with the good things. We can see that as Krishna's grace. So we can see how he's actually answering so many prayers. And one of the things, actually, Ambika and I speak about this often, my wife, that often if sometimes we get kind of like we can all become negative thinkers, where we're like, oh, this is not happening, that's not happening fast enough. But if we're really mindful and grateful, we can see that the things that we wanted in our life, 5 years ago, we're actually most likely living them today. And that's because of Krishna's grace. So we can see also the blessings that are coming in our life as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah? Okay, cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Time is limited. I think I'll end. We can discuss after the Prashadam, during the Prashadam time, what is going to discuss.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, everyone. With loud 3 Haribol.
Haribol.
Haribol.